You've been trying to figure out who you are.
Not in a philosophical way, in a survival way. Because somewhere along the road, maybe recently, maybe years ago,
Something happened that shook the ground beneath you. Betrayal. A failure. A relationship that ended badly.
a version of yourself you put everything into.
That the world rejected. And since then, there's been this quiet question. Underneath everything you do. Who am I if that didn't work out? Who am I if they left? Who am I if I failed? Who am I if no one chose me? Dark psychology found you in that moment, and it offered you an answer. It said, you are whoever you need to be to survive. You are the mask. You are the strategy. You are the leverage you hold, and the image you project. But here's the problem with building your identity on strategy. The moment the strategy fails, and it always eventually fails, you have nothing left to stand on. Today, we're going to talk about the one thing that cannot be taken from you. Not by betrayal, not by failure, not by people who couldn't see your worth, not by circumstances that had no right to happen. Your identity, the real one, the one that was there before the world got its hands on you. And we're going to meet 4 figures who prove what happens when a person knows who they are, so deeply that nothing, not loss, not empire, not ridicule, not war can shake it loose. Maximus, the general who became a slave, you know this feeling even if you've never set foot in an arena. You had something, a position, a relationship, a version of your life that made sense. Then it was ripped away, not because you failed, not because you did anything wrong, but because someone with more power than you decided it was over.
That's Maximus.
The opening of Gladiator, he is the most respected general in Rome. He has the love of his soldiers,
The trust of his emperor, and a life waiting home.
and in one night, through betrayal, through the ambition of a man who couldn't stand to be outshone, he loses everything. His position, his family, his freedom. He wakes up in chains in the dirt, being told he is nothing. Most people in that moment make one of 2 choices. They either collapse, they let the loss define them, shrink into bitterness and victimhood, and spend the rest of their lives haunted by what they used to be, or they do what dark psychology teaches. They rebuild through cold strategy, through revenge,
Through making themselves untouchable.
so nothing can ever hurt them like that again. Maximus does neither.
In the arena, stripped of every title, every rank,
Every external marker of who he was, a slave trader asks him his name, and he refuses to give it, not out of defiance, out of something deeper.
because he knows that his name, his real identity,
Was never given to him by Rome, was never contained in a title or a rank, or the approval of an emperor. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance. He doesn't say I was a general. He says I am a father. I am a husband. He reaches past everything that was taken, finds the identity that was always underneath.
the one that loss could not touch.
Here's the question that makes this personal for you. When everything external is stripped away, the job title, the relationship status, the achievements, the image you project online,
Who are you underneath all of that?
if you can't answer that question,
Then you are building your life on ground.
that can be taken. And everything built on ground, that can be taken. One betrayal away from collapse. The work of identity isn't finding a better strategy. It's finding the bedrock beneath the strategy. The thing that was true about you, before the world had an opinion about it. David identity that doesn't need validation. You've probably been overlooked, passed over for something you deserved,
Underestimated by someone who should have known better.
dismissed by people who didn't take the time.
To actually see you. And the wound that creates the quiet belief. That maybe they were right. Maybe you're not.
As valuable as you thought. That wound is exactly what dark psychology exploits. It says, prove them wrong. Build your image so powerfully that no one can dismiss you again. Craft your appearance into a weapon. Make them regret underestimating you. But David's story offers something more radical than revenge. When Samuel comes to Jesse's house,
To anoint the next king of Israel.
Jesse doesn't even call David in from the fields. He presents his other sons, the tall ones, the strong ones, the ones who look like kings. God says no to every single one of them. Then he says, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. David was chosen before anyone in the room could see why. Think about what that means for you personally. The crowd that overlooked you, your family that underestimated you, the person who left, employer who passed you over.
The community that didn't recognize your worth.
They were looking at the wrong things. They were using the wrong criteria. Their opinion of you is not the final verdict on who you are. David didn't become worth choosing when Samuel anointed him.
He was worth choosing before anyone knew it.
The anointing didn't create his identity. It revealed it. Your identity is not waiting to be created by someone else's recognition. It already exists. The question is whether you believe that deeply enough to stop outsourcing your sense of worth
To people who are looking at the wrong things.
You know who you are, the way David knew. Not arrogantly, not loudly, but with the quiet.
Unshakable certainty of someone who has been.
To the fields alone, and found out what they're made of. You become remarkably difficult to destabilize. Insults slide off. Rejection doesn't redefine you. Betrayal hurts but doesn't break you, because the ground you're standing on wasn't given to you by the person who just walked away. Leonidas, the man who was his values.
We met Leonidas in video 3.
But here we look at him through a different lens. What made Leonidas able to stand at Thermopylae? And courage in the moment. It was identity built over a lifetime. The Spartan training system, the Agorge, began when boys were 7 years old, not to make them violent, to make them certain, to build an identity so deep, so tested,
So repeatedly proven under pressure, that when the moment
of maximum fear arrived, they wouldn't need to think about who they were. They would simply be it. This is relevant to your life right now. Because here's the thing about identity. It isn't just something you discover. It's something you build. Every time you act in alignment with your values, under pressure, you are laying another stone in the foundation of who you are. Every time you choose integrity when dishonesty would have been easier, you are becoming someone who chooses integrity. Every time you show up when you could have quit,
you are becoming someone who shows up.
the dark psychology system says, act strategically.
In every situation, read the room, be whoever you need to be.
A person who is whoever they need to be has no identity. They have only adaptations. And adaptations are exhausting to maintain and impossible to build a life on. Leonidas didn't ask at the pass, who should I be right now to survive this? He already knew who he was. He had known for 30 years. And that knowing gave him the freedom. Walk into the most terrifying moment of his life without flinching. What would it feel like to know yourself that clearly? To have spent so many years living by your values, that when pressure comes, when someone betrays you, when circumstances collapse, when the crowd turns against you, you don't scramble for a strategy. You just stand. Aragorn, the king who had to choose himself first. This one is for the person who knows, somewhere deep down, what they're capable of, and is terrified of it. Aragorn, in The Lord of the Rings, is the heir to the throne of Gondor.
He has the bloodline, the skill, the wisdom, the character, everything that a king needs.
For most of the story, he is running from it. Not because he is weak, because he is afraid of becoming what his ancestor,
Isildur, became a man who had everything,
and was destroyed by it.
His greatest fear isn't failure.
It's that he will rise to his full identity, and then corrupt it. So he hides. He calls himself a ranger. He stays in the shadows. He serves without claiming his rightful place. You might know this feeling better than any other in this video. Not the feeling of being overlooked, but the feeling of choosing to stay small, of knowing you have more to offer than you're currently giving, of sensing a calling, a purpose, a version of yourself that is larger than the one you're currently living, and finding reasons to stay where you are. It feels safer. It feels more humble. It feels less dangerous than stepping into something that could fail, that could expose you, that requires you to fully claim who you are.
But here's what the story of Aragorn makes clear. The world doesn't just lose when you refuse to step into your identity. You lose.
The unlived life doesn't disappear. It follows you.
Shows up as restlessness, as low-grade dissatisfaction,
as the feeling that something is missing, even when nothing is technically wrong. Aragorn eventually has to make a choice, not to become king for power or status or recognition, but because the moment demands the fullness of who he is, and withholding it would be a betrayal of everything he values. The world will at some point demand the fullness of who you are, not a strategy, not an image, not a performance. You, the real, complete, unedited version of you. And the only question is whether you'll have done
work of knowing who that is before the moment arrives. 4 figures. 4 different kinds of identity crisis.
Maximus, stripped of everything external,
Finding the identity underneath.
David, overlooked by everyone,
Chosen by the one whose opinion actually mattered.
Leonidas' identity built so deep through daily discipline that pressure couldn't shake it. Aragorn, running from the fullness of himself, finally choosing to step into it. Each one of them is you at a different moment in your story. Maybe right now you're Maximus, rebuilding from the ground up after something tore your world apart. Maybe you're David, working in obscurity, wondering if anyone will ever actually see you. Maybe you're Leonidas, in the process of building something daily that the world hasn't recognized yet. Maybe you're Aragorn, knowing who you are, afraid to fully become it. Wherever you are, the work is the same. Stop building your identity on what can be taken. Build it on what cannot. Not your job title, your values, not your relationship status, your character, not your follower count, your integrity, not what the crowd sees, what you know.
Be true about yourself when no one is watching.
The dark psychology system promises to make you untouchable by making you unreachable. But the only way to be truly untouchable,
To know yourself so deeply that what other people
think, say, or do with your name cannot reach the core of who you are. That's not a strategy. That's an identity. That, unlike leverage, unlike image, unlike cold calculation, is something no one can ever take from you. Who are you? Not who you perform. Not who you're afraid of becoming.
not who you used to be before everything fell apart.
Who are you? Find that. Build that. Live that. Everything else follows. Welcome to Light Psychology.